the frame break. This is, and I like to call it the frame break because this is where people's mind starts to break. And it's my favorite part because there's nothing better than when somebody actually thinks through this part of the process and they're like, I can't compute, like this doesn't make sense. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second. That does make sense. This is all like that's kind of where it all comes together. So the frame break, and this is in the worksheet that I shared. You're gonna take a 3-year goal. Okay, I like to say three. Too much more than that is like you can't even predict what's going to be happening in 3 years. If it's one, that might not be quite enough time. It can happen, but the idea here is that this should pretty much feel impossible. Okay. So I want you guys to think about a 3-year goal from now. Like, what is so important to you that in 3 years you would have achieved this thing? All right. Now, hopefully, you guys have something you're thinking about. Now, multiply it by 10. Okay. So it could be number of clients, it could be number of stages you're speaking on, it could be number of people in your community, right? And then shrink your timeline from 3 years to 3 months. This is a crazy thing to think about. But if you take your goal and you multiply it by three, or your 3-year goal and you multiply it by 10, and then you reduce the timeline to 3 months, it should feel totally impossible, right? Am I wrong on that, or does that resonate? Okay, and that's okay because impossible goals create that filter that we're talking about. The impossible goals help you strip away the things that would not get you there that so often we're doing because we're thinking in a linear way, in a long-term way that's not actually going to help us in the long run. And it'll help you identify things that maybe you shouldn't even be doing. Um, so does anybody have a goal that comes to mind that you want to share that we can kind of play with and workshop as we're going through this?
Sure. So my goal, um, excuse me, is to retire in Costa Rica, and have a little shop where I can sell all my artwork because I'm creative and I do all sorts of art and jewelry and soap and stuff like that. So that would be that's the picture. And I would still be writing, so I would still have an income because I would still be writing, but I would write at my own leisure on the beach. So that's the goal.
Okay. And so that one might be hard to, multiply by 10. But I know we've had, conversations around
Right,
like what it would take to get there, right?
right,
So can
right.
we kind of play with that thinking, that type of goal?
Okay. So for my 3-year goal, I would like to have, I'm going to say 50 um, copywriting clients.
Okay, perfect. So 3 years, you have 50 copywriting clients.
Yeah,
Now, using this framework, and
multiply it by 10.
yeah, we multiply it by 10. So 500 clients in 3 years might seem big as it already is. Now let's reduce the timeline to 3 months. So this would be the end of January 2026.
I would
And
have 500 clients by the end of January 2026.
right.
Yeah, okay, from your mouth to God's ears.
So if that were to happen,
Hmm.
what are some things that would need to change? What are some things that, you might be doing currently that would need to be let go of or
Oh,
optimized?
I would hire someone to do my LinkedIn. I would oh, I just thought of something else. Yeah, I would hire someone to manage my CRM.
Mhm.
Not so much manage my schedule. I like to manage my own schedule, but to manage the CRM. So that's what I would want.
Okay. Does it seem doable? Is this a possible goal? 500 clients by the end of January?
By the end of January 2026,
Yes.
that's impossible.
Has it
It's just
ever
not
been done?
possible. It's even physically not possible for me to service that many clients. So no, it's not
Right.
possible.
Okay. And I know, just going through the exercise here, there may or may not be things that you would actually want with that kind of goal because
Right.
in order for you to have 500 clients, what would need to be true?
What would need to be true for me to have 500 clients?
Hmm.
Um, I would have to have, um, I would have to have freelancers and subcontractors working for me. So I'd have to scale the business as opposed to right now, it's just me doing all the writing.
Right. Okay. Um, cool. Got it. So we'll just kind of put a pin in that, because these are some of the things we dig into in the mastermind, but just for example purposes, so people can kind of see, like, yeah, it seems impossible, feels impossible. Is it impossible? Maybe, but there might be a path to get there. And, in this example, that right there is a good indicator that if you did want to have 500 clients, for example, you would need to have different things in place than what you currently do. Now, whether or
Yeah.
not that's actually aligned with what you would want to do, that really comes down to a lot of the future self stuff that we talk about is that aligned with the version of your future self that you want to become, right? So if that's in the vision, then great. Then maybe we start to think about a path to make that happen. And when we keep the 3 month timeline and the 10x goal, because that can really start to shape some things. So we're going to keep going though. So, uh, like I said, so this helps you demand the brutal clarity. It helps cut the noise, kill the distractions, because in order to achieve, say, 500 clients in the next 3 months, there's probably a lot of things that you're currently doing that don't actually serve that goal, that don't actually serve the purpose of what you would want to achieve. All right. So let me ask you this, Lori. If it was possible, if you did have 500 clients by the end of January and your business was optimized, it wasn't taking a ton of your extra time, it was just as easy to manage as it currently is, would you want that?
Mm. Um, sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Right. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
why not? Right? More clients,
Yeah.
more money.
Yeah. Well, because my initial plan for the copy lab was for it to just be me and not to scale it. That wasn't, really in my original plans, to scale it into like, into a full-fledged agency. So that, yeah, I wouldn't be adverse to that happening. So yeah.
And why wouldn't you want that?
Um, Because I was thinking about retirement and thinking that in my retirement, I would, probably want to just do something on my own where I wasn't responsible for other people.
Okay. But maybe in this scenario, you would only get the cream of the crop, right? You would only get the copywriting jobs for, people like
Right,
jobs, right?
right.
Just to play on
Okay,
words. Or you'd only get the jobs for like, New York Times articles or Forbes magazines or
right.
things
Okay,
like that, right? That
right.
sounds that sounds like fun, right?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
yeah. So, and that's something that would probably come as a result of that. So the thing about this is by having this framework, thinking about, okay, if I were to optimize my business in a way that I could have 500 clients, there's probably a lot of things that become noise, right? And it then creates the mindset around, okay, this is not something that I should actually be doing or optimizing for in that scenario, right? And so thinking about, okay, if I had 500 clients and it was easy and it was joyful, like what would that need to look like? And if it can be done in a way that's faster and that is still impactful and still, successful for you, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't I want that? Right. And then it kind of poses the question, and this quote from Steve Jobs, that innovation is knowing the thousand things to say no to. What are the things you got to say no to? Right. Anything that doesn't actually support getting there, is something that you would want to say no to. And so thinking about that 500 clients, right? And what it would look like if it was easy, what it would look like if it was fun, and what it would look like if getting there was easy and fun and not actually doing 10 times more work for 5 years, right? But 10x leveraged activities for 3 months. What would those activities be that got you to 500 clients? There might be some systems and processes that need to be in place, or
Oh
people that
yeah.
need to be put in place to make that happen. But the idea here is really to encourage kind of thinking through that. And if you throw it out the window and you decide it's not, in the vision, right, that aligns with the future self, then that's okay too. But it might help you start thinking about different things to optimize versus not. So, yeah, anyway, talked about the future self. So, using this framework, this is going to help you identify the systems that maybe shouldn't exist. What are some things that you're putting in place now that don't serve the goal, that don't serve the purpose that you're focused on? Remove those things and stop optimizing those things that shouldn't even exist. And that's going to help open up your time, open up your calendar to really focus on the highest impact tasks, right? Um, this question is probably one of the most important questions of the whole exercise is what do you need to let go of? If you're focusing on 10xing, there are so many different things that we do on a daily basis that are weighing us down and creating these barriers to actually growing in a way that we want to. So it takes letting go of things, right? And it could be letting go of limiting habits, limiting beliefs, processes, different mindsets that we are holding on to that we're stuck in the past because of past patterns and things that are actually not going to get us to where we want to go. This could be, like I talked about, systems, it could be opportunities, it could be entire business ventures that we're doing that ultimately just don't get us there, right? And at the end of the day, eliminating the 80% that only produces 20% of results, shifting that to focus on the 20% that produces 80% of results. If we look at the best clients, the people that have paid us the most, the people that have created the greatest impact and, kind of been our star clients, those are the 20% that produce the 80% of results. And how did we get them? Who are they? And, how do we attract more of those people? By aligning with those types of things that have created that level of growth and stripping out the rest, that's really going to help us create that impact in our business. Does that make sense? You guys with me?
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. So before I go to this next one, any thoughts or questions or anything you guys want to throw in while I'm here?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear to me because I'm pretty aware of what's available via AI that like now we have a chance to like 100x our efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I have this habit, maybe it's my age, of like holding on to old processes when I know that if I just spend half a day to like install a new thing, I will 100x the speed at which I can get shit done. It's, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. What else? Anybody else want to share? What comes to mind when you see this question? What do you need to let go of? What are some things that might be weighing you down, either from habits, processes, systems, mindsets, people? People is a hard one. Businesses, also a hard one. What comes to mind for you guys? Anything else you want to share? Oh, yeah, I think there we go.
I was mute, sorry. So I'm a really good builder. I build stuff. I'm good in this. But yeah, I'm not a structure person. I live in this, creative chaos. But I make it happen. um, what we're talking about today. So what do you need to let go of? I'm pretty sure there's stuff that I need to let go of that I don't know. So I like to work with others. I like to collaborate. I like to co-create. So, we are each other like we are mirroring each other. We can show each other, like tell each other, hey, you could do this, you could do this. And I love that. I love that. I love that kind of collaboration with people.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, and I really encourage, doing a check on this question regularly, because so often, like I said before, going 10x means doing less. It doesn't mean doing more. It means doing the most impactful things while letting go of the things that don't actually produce results. All right. So sometimes the things that actually produce results are a person who can take you from where you are at now to where you actually want to go. There's a book called Slipstream Time Hacking that talks about wormholes. This is probably one of my favorite terms because it's so interesting. But a wormhole as a person, somebody that, like I said, can take you from where you're at now. And if you think about a wormhole, right, it's this hole in the universe that if you get sucked through it, you're going to be in a completely different reality. And if you have somebody in your life who has achieved the things you're talking about, right? So I want to go back to Lori's scenario of 500 clients. You said it was impossible. Has it ever been done? Probably. Has anybody ever signed up 500 clients for copywriting in 3 months?
Oh, I don't know about that. That would be tough. I would really, yeah, that would surprise me. That's a lot of clients to sign up.
Absolutely. Especially, there's where you're at that is going to dictate the, you know, the belief of that possibility.
Mhm.
But if somebody has done it, you know, what did that look like? And this could be a 250 word piece of copy for a group of 3,000 business owners that 500 actually sign up and only pay you $1, right? Now, that
Right.
might not be the best scenario, but maybe that's the lead into now I have 500 clients that I can work with. Now, if that were to happen, you might not have everything in your capacity to make that happen, but maybe it could be some sort of waiting list, or they pay and then they need to fill something out and then you take it and run with it. I don't imagine something like that would actually, take too incredibly long to deliver, and it's on a first come first serve basis, incredible pricing, but that could lead into now let's talk about you working with us on an ongoing basis, right? So, and that's just something to kind of like think about, right? But it could be possible. But then the question is 500 clients really what you actually would want? Or is it more of a financial number that having that would produce? And so, you talked about having 50 clients, right? And if they're all paying, 10,000, that's the same as 500 paying 1,000, right? And
Mhm.
so sometimes we 10x on the number of, people we're working with, or that number, when the actual result of financial number is what we really want. And
Right.
so if the end result was money that you want, and let's say it was $500,000 a year or a month, right? If you have 50 a month and they're paying you 10K a month, or if your average engagement is $1,000 a month and you have
Right.
50, then you're at 5K, right? If you're at 500 clients at $1,000, that's 500K a month, right?
Yep.
But if you shifted the avatar to people that could only pay $10,000 a month, then you've actually 10x the result of the money that you want by increasing the value or the target that you're working with, right? So
Right.
just some ways to
Right.
think about
Right.
that, which
I understand.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know you do. I'm just saying that, when you look at who has achieved this kind of thing before, maybe there are ways. Are you familiar with Luke Matthews by chance?
The name is familiar, but
Yeah, he's a huge copywriter on LinkedIn. And I
oh,
would
okay, no, I
say
don't know.
and he has tons of clients. I don't know how many clients, but he grew exponentially by creating content on LinkedIn. And what I'm saying here is that not only is there the opportunity to align with a who that could create that wormhole for you to get you to where you're trying to go faster because they've done it before in the past, but there are also the who's to learn from to base what they've done and how they got to where they got, how they got to where you want to go,
Right.
and learn from what they've done. Because there's no point in, reinventing the wheel if the wheel
Oh,
is already there, right?
excuse me, my phone, excuse me.
Okay, cool. So anyway, so that's kind of what, how I like to look at the who behind 10xing in your business, right? So we're gonna do that. So anyway, the other who that is probably the most important who in this equation is yourself. And the question with that is, who do you need to become to be the person that achieved these 10x goals of your dreams to actually make that happen? A lot of the time, we think about, oh, I got to do more, oh, I got to make more happen, all these different things. But at the end of the day, there's an internal shift that might need to happen to actually be the kind of person that would achieve these types of goals. And so I encourage you guys to think about, who would you actually need to become? And thinking about your future self, not only what would their ideal lifestyle look like and what is it that they're achieving and how did they get there, but who do they actively need to be in order to achieve that goal, that 10x goal? And then start making decisions as that person. And I like to think about, so, okay, so we went 3 years out into the future. Let's say 3 years from now, you have 500 clients and everything's working smoothly. It looks great. What are the decisions that that person makes on an ongoing basis to continue keeping everything intact and keeping, all the trains running on time? But not only that, but having all the people in place to make that happen, right? And so thinking about it from that way, but then applying it to the now is, what decisions would they make today? And am I making those decisions to actively be that person of my future now, the version that you're actually proud of? So this is probably one of the most, impactful ways that you can think about this is, am I being the person that my future self is proud of, that achieved all of those things? Or am I being the person that stays where they're at, or maybe only grows incrementally because of past decisions and patterns and habits? All right. So, yeah. So all of this to say, when we talk about this framework and using time as a tool and 10xing our goals and then reducing them to 3 months from now, it's really all about collapsing timelines. And there's this quote from John F. Kennedy, where he said, "We choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard." Now, I want you to think about this with your own goals. If it was easy, what would that look like? And if it was easy to do it in 3 years versus the end of the decade, which is what he had chosen, what would that look like? If it was easy and it happened faster, what could that actually look like? And then shrink it even more. What if it was in 3 months? Is that something that is actually possible? And if not, great. Sit with it. Like, my goal for this whole web class is to have you identify a goal that seems absolutely crazy, impossible, like no way would that happen, but just sit with it and just start to kind of think about, because the possibilities in this universe are infinite, and we don't really know what can help create those results until we really open our mind to it, and those answers might actually come to us. And it really should help you start to think, oh, well, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, I'd have to stop doing this over here, I'd have to completely change everything. And it's like, oh man, yeah, well, that's what I need to do. So if the goal doesn't feel impossible, it might just not be big enough. All right. So last part of this is identify. Once you've got that 10x goal that honestly scares you and the timeline that feels crazy impossible, but the path starts to get clear, is to get laser clear on what is that highest leveraged action that you can take right now that will make everything else easier or irrelevant, but really start the ball rolling to achieve that 10x level of growth that can ultimately create what you really want, right? So many times people are focused on what they want, but they're not focused on what they really want. And that's because they don't have it and they don't see the potential. But this can really start to reshape some things for you. So, yeah. So the last part, like I was talking about, is we do have our 10x Unicorn Mastermind. Lori's in it. Mark, I know you and I talked about you coming on as a guest, but having other people, and whether you're in that group or not, having other people that you can workshop these frameworks with, share the goal with, and really kind of get some feedback on, is that goal ultimately what you want? Is that ultimately, the desired outcome that you are looking to create? As well as, does the path make sense? Having other people you can bounce this off of will really help you, by having people challenge your thinking, identify other pathways, and create accountability. Yeah, Lori.
I was just gonna say, so I'm in the I'm in the unicorn universe, and what I love about it is that it's educational. So while there's networking, because we all meet each other and find out what we do and we network, it's educational, and you always leave with something tangible that either makes you think, or that you can employ in your business, or that you can help, employ in one of your clients' businesses. So I'm in 5 networking groups, and this one is completely different than any other networking group that you would be in. So it's very educational, and you really get a lot out of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I
No
appreciate that.
problem.
Yeah, I like to share the knowledge that I have, you know, gone out and found and discovered, and and also bring other people in, like Lori. Lori was part of Strategic Coach that Dan Sullivan, who co-authored 10x is easier than 2x for a number of years, and really understands a lot of what we're talking about. So we've brought Lori in to teach copywriting and other things like that. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, cool. So do you guys mind if I go through kind of, what it looks like to be in the 10x Unicorn Mastermind and all that? Yeah? All right, cool.